Slightly above average gamers, way above average podcast. Welcome to the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast with your hosts, J007TV and Sub1KD.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 28 of the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. I am one of your hosts, J007TV, and I'm joined, as always, by the homie Sub1KD. How you doing, brother?
Doing well. How are you guys?
I'm good. How was your week?
Not bad. Allergies are starting to kick up and make a mess of things, but that is, it is life. I'm making a big change, big gaming related change. I bought a streaming PC.
Okay.
Comes in today. And that frees up.
Setting it up today?
I'm going to start poking at it. But that will free up my current PC, which is a gaming laptop, to actually game on. So,
okay,
hopefully I can jump into Helldivers before that's not popular. That's not cool anymore.
Well, and also look at Ghost Recon or some of the other games to see.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some things we can kind of add into the rotation.
Yeah. So I will join the master race as a PC gamer, at least part-time. Have some fun. And we'll see how this shakes out. But so that'll be a big change. I have to figure out how to buy games on PC. I haven't bought a game on PC since you went into EB Games or GameStop and you picked up a box and you took it to the cashier and you came home and you put the CD in your disk drive. Like, that's how long it's been since I've played PC games. So even when Steam was around, you still had to buy the box to get the stuff to play on Steam, like Half-Life 2. So my Steam account is Half-Life 2 era.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, now everything's digital. My PC doesn't even have a disc tray. Neither one. My laptop that I stream through, nor the gaming PC.
Oh,
so
yeah. Same.
That's pretty awesome, man. It's just...
My kids don't know what a CD is. They've never seen one.
Yeah, my kids barely know what a DVD is, but yeah. But, I was just going to say, the great thing about being on PC is it does give you more options as far as games to choose from. Now, I have to, full disclosure, I'm a grinder, and I don't like the idea of letting a game break me, so I have stuck with Call of Duty a lot longer than I should. Meanwhile, I've got other friends that I've clowned here and there that, play 85 different games, right? And you know what? Their mental is probably way better than mine is right now. So yeah, being able to have a game. Or
they're just dealing with the most ADHD ever.
Yeah, that's true too. But being able to have like a gaming PC and just have options to choose from, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be a bit of a learning curve as I kind of switch over and I have to reconfigure. I have to set that PC up, reconfigure this PC, and then I don't know, I might get it optimized and see how that shakes out. And but so I'll be probably split gaming. I'll probably stick to COD on console just because I'm so invested in it. But I want to try it out. But I'm going to wait until till the next video I'm working on is done and out, just to avoid issues.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah. Otherwise, kind of the same old same. We're in the busy season here on the ranch, so a lot of getting ready for spring, trying to bring new stuff on and fix up the old stuff for summer. Otherwise, it's doing well.
Quails, llamas, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Surprised you haven't got a llama pin yet.
Don't tell my wife. She will consider it. She's in the
probably wouldn't be that hard to build the pin. Just saying.
Shut up. So. So, anyways, about Warzone. About them Warzone.
Yeah, something else that can drive you nuts that you have no control over.
But yeah, no. Things are good, but Warzone's kind of in a weird spot, I think, personally. How about you?
I think so too. I'm not the only one that's saying some of the things that I'm saying on Twitter. I know
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of the top tier players, while they were excited about ranked at first, they were over ranked resurgence in a matter of weeks, and then they tweaked the SR, and you have guys that are winning 2 matches in a row and going -40 SR. That doesn't really
Yeah.
make a whole lot of sense. So
Well,
there's been some changes that they made to that ranked system, but just overall, I haven't played any ranked, so I can't really say about the state of that. But just overall, the game itself, it can be taxing sometimes depending on what you have going on that night. And, unfortunately, who you play with matters.
mm-hmm. It does. I so I have been off the big map and on off Resurgence for that matter for a while. But I played games last night with friend of the pod Lizard, if you know who that is,
Okay. Yeah,
and
I do.
so we jumped in with him. We ran some trios, duo trios, just generally having fun. Had some pretty decent lobbies to start with. 3 wins, some fairly enjoyable gunfights, and then SBMM kicked in and off the rails it went. So a little rough, but good to kind of kick the tires and get back to it. But
Yeah, and we'll be talking about SBMM later
mm-hmm.
also.
But yeah, just good to keep up the grind. Unfortunately, I'm mostly just in a holding pattern, doing the weekly challenges every week that come up, trying to keep that streak going. But which is a good system to get us back in playing if you're getting tired of COD, but you don't want to, but you'll probably go back to it at some point. It's good to have these challenges in place so you don't miss out on or so you don't take a break and have that break too long. So good on them. I'm not 100% sold that the weekly challenges is that exciting though of a grind. Have you messed with those at all?
Oh, yeah, every week. Every week, especially
Mm-hmm.
when, what was it? What's the last, the SOA, I forget the name of it.
The new
That
gun,
battle rifle
the battle rifle.
that just came out.
Yep.
Yeah, I did that, but I've done, I think, every single weekly challenge. I mean, on one hand, we all complained about them capping the ranks
Mm-hmm.
and getting max level and finishing your battle pass halfway through the season and then not having anything else to grind for. So yes, it's good that they did these weekly challenges, and for the most part, the stuff that you get with it is pretty solid.
Yeah,
I
you get
like the
most
fact that they did
aftermarket
that.
parts and all that stuff. So and the
Yeah,
I like that there's a reason to keep going back every week, because if you miss a week, you don't get the camo at the end. And so far the camos have been 50-50, but the last one they gave us was pretty good.
that magma camo from a few weeks ago is my favorite camo that
Yeah.
I've probably gotten in a while. So yes, on one hand that's good, but on the other hand, let's not gloss over the fact that they're doing that because they know that people do stop playing the game for a while, and if they stop playing the game for a while, what are they not doing?
Spending
They're not
money.
buying stuff in the store.
That's right.
Which I think we should actually spend a little bit of time on. I know it's not on the list here, but like we should talk about here in just a little bit the store.
Yeah, sounds good.
And
But
because I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
yeah, absolutely. Tack that in at the end of the State of Warzone. But my yeah, I think the weekly camo grind, no, the weekly challenge grind is interesting because it does give us something extra to grind for, and especially since they cap the levels, it's kind of it's an olive branch to the grinders out there. I do think that some of the challenges are pretty simplistic, and others are just straight up like the amount of time you spend in the game. So if you're actually playing the game, you'll get them without trying. A lot of the Warzone ones are like that. You know, it's open, it's kill
Right.
10 enemies in this quarter of the map, kill 10 enemies over there. So you play for like you play 2 hours a night for a couple of days of the week. You're almost guaranteed to hit 3 or 4 of those right off rip, and then the Warzone ones are always like they're always the weakest, but they're the most time consuming to do. Right? It's open 50 chests. It's kill X number of enemies. It's you know complete X number of contracts. So it's it's not hard, right? There's no it is straight time spent grinding. But I run into the problem of I want it. I don't want to forget about it, and so I'll jump in on day one. And lately, I've been like, how efficiently can I get all the first 5 done? And so I've got a system where it's like I will now go in and I'll look at like, all right, like this past week it was like, get X number of kills with a battle rifle or a marksman rifle, um, that had a certain number of attachments or was recommended or something. And then another one was get X number of kills with a recommended battle rifle in tac stance. Well, great. I'm going to pick a battle rifle that counts for both and just run it in tac stance, right? And then it's 2 done. And so I ended up doing all 3. I did all 5 in 2 matches, just playing for efficiency. And now it which is good because I don't miss anything. But now I'm feeling like, well, there's no point in trying to grind the rest of them. I'll take what I get when I get it. I'm already max level. I'm max XP level, so there's no point in trying to grind for XP, right? And I think that's where
Right.
that honestly is the negative. That's where it fails because the XP level caps. Like once you unlock all 5, like the 5 you need for the aftermarket part slash seasonal camo, like what's the point in worrying about the rest of them, right? Like you don't get anything for it.
I don't. Yeah, I don't really think there is one, and yeah, it does suck to be capped XP wise. When it comes down to like a new weapon, I think the parts are obviously a little bit different because you don't have to worry about maxing those out. But like when it comes down to a weapon, I'm trying to get mine as soon as possible and get it as fast as possible. It took me a little bit longer on that SOA battle rifle, but it was only a level 17. Like 17 was the max level for it. So once I got it, I maxed it out, but just getting it took me a little bit longer than I had hoped. But it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a grinder. We were talking about this earlier before we hopped on here. I'm a grinder, so at least having that little something to grind is great for me personally.
Yeah, and it's nice to get it. If only they move the banners out of your freaking crosshairs when it when you unlock one, because that's a lot of stuff in the way. Especially if you unlock multiple at the same time, it's just this like 15-20 seconds where you just can't see anything, and it's beyond frustrating. And
right,
I'm going to talk about my kill of the week at the end, but it almost got spoiled by one of those graphical pop-ins, an indicator in the game, just right over the crosshair. Still got it, which made it even more impressive to me. But it was like absurd. So, but yeah, I think overall it's a nice to have. I'm glad they did it, and I wish it counted for more. I wish it was worth doing more than 5 every week, unless once you hit the level cap.
Right. No, I agree. At least it's a start, because the previous couple titles, once you hit the cap, you didn't get anything. So, I mean, I guess occasionally they'd throw out a new weapon where you needed to try to do some things to unlock, if I can remember correctly. But that was few and far between. So, I don't mind what they have going on. I'll give them credit for that.
Yeah.
But it is the little annoyance things, like you were talking about with the banner that comes up. Those things just add up and snowball and really push forward the frustration level of a lot of people, because you're already
Yeah.
dealing with some of the other stuff like the SBMM, cheaters, those kind of things.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just like those little things, right? That just snowball and add up.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's frustrating me about this game right now is that we haven't seen them change the map season by season, like at all.
I'd be happy with them changing the Gulag. I think it's still the same since this came out.
I like the Gulag, so I'm good with it. I think they've got a good Gulag. Considering how they've
I
done
kind of
Gulags in the
liked the
past,
changes.
how they've ruined like absolutely terrible Gulags, I'm content with them sticking with a nice Gulag that works well. I mean, they've got in BR, they've got what three different Gulag maps that they rotate through.
Yeah, 3 different little iterations of it, sure.
Yeah, which I'm fine with. I think the Gulag plays well. They could, if anything, get rid of some of that. They could get rid of some of the head glitches on the wings of that one version of it. You know, they got those crates you can just pony up behind and head glitch
Yeah,
off
right
of.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
make those shoot through. Wall bangable. I think would go a long ways, or just get rid of them completely. But neither here nor there.
Right.
It's running well. So I'm okay with the Gulag, but like, I just remember in Warzone 1, it was like we had the map for like the preseason, and then the whole first season we had the map. And then was it season 2 that they opened up the stadium? Was like the first major change.
I think so.
And
It's
then
2 or
every
3.
season there was something new, right? Every season they added something new, or they changed something. Like they added the subway system, and then they added because the subway stations were there. They opened them up and they added the subway, and then they added what else did they add? They added just different POIs. They changed stuff. They moved things around, and so the map had different eras to it, right? And with Urzikstan, it was like, or not Urzikstan, with Al Mazrah, it was you had Al Mazrah, and then you had Halloween Al Mazrah, and then it was on Urzikstan, and we're still in the same Urzikstan. And it's like, I don't want to complain because the maps aren't terrible, but at the same time, just having that dynamic feel between the maps was great. Like, I enjoyed that, and I hope they bring that back.
Yeah, it's nice to have changes to the map. If they're not going to give us a rotation, like a map rotation, which they could do it right now. I mean, in theory, I would think they could do it right now. I mean, other BRs have maps that they rotate in. PUBG does, so does Apex. We're rotating maps on the smaller maps. I don't know if maybe this is just these maps are too big and that's why they can't. I don't know. But if they're not going to do that, they do need to be making changes to the POIs at least. Maybe drain the river one season or something like that. Like that's stuff like that. Do something different. It's almost like that. That little GIF where you see the little stick figure guy and he's holding a stick and poking something. He's like, do something.
Come on, do something.
That's how I feel right now with some of these things on the map. But also, if you really think about it, their map team is likely already on to the next map,
which is Verdansk.
And that's probably everybody knows it's going to be Verdansk.
Yeah, it's Verdansk.
But that's probably the majority of where their focus is. And now it's like they probably just have like people that just keep an eye on things to make sure shit ain't broke. And if it is, try to fix it in a timely manner, which, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and give them credit again because they have been on top of things, fixing things quickly. I have zero complaints for Sledgehammer or Raven for the most part, on fixing everything, minus the thing that we're going to talk about next.
You call bug, I call feature. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's look, yeah, the studios this year have done great about staying on top of the game and not letting not giving us 140 days of the RPK. So I have no complaints about their willingness to change the things that are not working right. Okay, so I'm good with that. I wish there felt like a plan to add to it, to have more,
Sure.
and I think that's what we're missing.
That's understandable. I think a lot of people are probably feeling the same way that you do. I know I agree with you on that. It would be nice.
Yeah, but
It,
one thing I do wish they'd shake up more is the ground loot, especially the weapons.
yeah.
I feel like they let the same weapons sit around for a long time, and it kind of like a lot of times they're a little stale. And there was that era where a lot of them were MW2 weapons, and they've clearly just given up on those guns. So it's like you get you pick up a gun and you're like, you're better off with the starter pistol because you're just going to lose the gunfight you're in.
They made this big fuss and like this big production out of the fact that Modern Warfare 2 weapons were going to be in this would be able to roll over into both Modern Warfare 3 and now. The only time those weapons were better than the Modern Warfare 3 weapons, which I told you was going to happen, that they would not let those be better for very long, if at all, was early in Modern Warfare 3. While we're all trying to grind weapons and unlock stuff for the Modern Warfare 3 stuff, you had certain douche canoes that were running around with maxed out TAC 56s. And I mean, it was cheese. It bothered me a lot early on. I don't really care now. We're into the game long enough. I don't really care. Use whatever you want, dude. But those guns, for the most part, are just not viable. I think within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I will say this: I've gotten killed by an M4 a few times in multiplayer.
Yeah, it's. I think multiplayer is in a better spot as a lot more guns are viable because the TGK is just fairly low in comparison.
Right.
Like compared to Warzone, right? Where, you're just, you're looking at like 250 to 300 milliseconds in most guns in multiplayer. If it's not one shot, like a shotgun or a sniper. So I think there's there's more room for Modern Warfare 2 guns to kind of perk their way up, and especially some of the changes they made to attachments and stuff like that. I think a lot more MW2 guns are viable in multi than we think they are. We just nobody bothers with them because a lot of the gun, the meta is MW3.
Right. And we'll revisit that here in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about the current state of the meta. I feel like I'm glad you put that on there because I feel like you have a really good handle or pulse for where we are weapon wise. Because I know that when we talked about this back when Modern Warfare 2 was going on, you made a few recommendations to me that were probably 3 or 4 weeks ahead of what before they became meta. And your builds were pretty darn close. So I'm looking forward to that part of the conversation.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I'm very, very happy about is the fact that they removed those MFing lasers from the Gulag.
Bummer.
Holy shit. Hallelujah. Let's get drunk. I mean, God damn. I'm telling you, dude, I hated the way that you had to play. There was literally only one way to play it, and it was go right straight in the middle and look at that deal and then try to sound for footsteps one way or the other. That was literally the only way. last night was the first time I've played that Gulag since they removed the lasers, because I've had a pretty busy week with Boss Man in town and stuff like that, so
Yeah.
I didn't really get to play at all. Last time I'd played before last night was Sunday, so I got to play last night without those lasers, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel like I won about 75% of my Gulags, whereas with those lasers, up until the last week of the lasers, believe it or not, I actually started doing decent in there. But prior to that, I went from 50-50 in the Gulag, roughly, which is where they want to keep you, to probably 20% wins, 80% losses. It was terrible.
You sure that wasn't aim
Absolute
assist?
terrible. Not today, Satan. No, sir. You're not. Nope. You're probably going to try to get me on that shit later.
We'll talk about that
some
we'll
more.
go there later.
But no, I don't think so. It was just the way it made you play that I really hated about it. And then coming back from the Gulag, like you mentioned, you're screwed because you still have that laser that everyone could freaking see.
And you can't turn
off.
And
you only have a 30-round magazine, too.
Yep. No, that was the worst part. That by itself was arguably the worst part of the lasers in the Gulag, is that when you win the Gulag, now you're stuck telling everybody where you are. Like the same advantage. So the lasers were fun because most people didn't know what to do with them. They just played like normal, right? So they just ran to whatever corner they were going to go to, or however they were going to play it. And it's like they just, especially guys with good centering, it's like, oh, okay, I know where you're going. And based on the map, if you know the Gulags enough, because some of us visit them often, you know where they're going, and it's like, okay, you're going to go over here, so I know how to play that. And so, like you said, the best way to play it was to right at the drop, when all the starting bells and noise kind of obscure what you're doing, run to the very center of the Gulag and just stand there behind the wall and listen for where they're going and watch for their lasers. And like, as long as you don't point your laser somewhere, like, you just keep the laser pointed right at the wall in front of you and just listen and kind of use the peripheral view to look for their lasers. I think I was winning about 85-90% of my Gulags during the laser era. Once I figured out how to do it properly. And most people would just, they'll just dead sprint somewhere, and it's like, okay, I not only hear you, but I see confirmation of exactly which direction you're looking, so I know whether I can jump out and chow you head on, or if I want to loop around behind you. Like, so it's like the ones that had the half circle in the middle, right? Like that was one of the easiest Gulags, because they just, they'll sprint one side, and you can just loop around it. Like I can watch the laser. I know they're facing one direction, so I know where they're looking. And I would just cut around the inside of the circle and either catch them side back as they went past, or if I didn't get that fast enough, they'd be looping around, and I just could loop all the way around and get them behind, get behind them. It had a couple of games where we're just round robining each other, right? Like they're running in this, they're going around the circle looking for me, and I'm chasing them. I just can't quite cut them off enough. So there was a strategy to it, and it was, once you figured it out and kind of got disciplined enough to do it, like it was an easy win most of the time. Like every Gulag I lost, it's because the other guy was cheating. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm sorry. I lost because I usually either missed my shots, or the other guy was just better most of the time. A couple of them where it was sus, but it is what it is.
One thing we should point out too is about the Gulag, but also just the game in general. I got to give them credit also for the sound improvements. Like you can actually hear in there, which is good. So
it's a little too,
kudos
too good.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. But I mean, just overall, the sound quality of the game right now is, in my mind, significantly better. And not just when I'm running the flexed perk. It's just better overall. So I like that. But the other change I think that doesn't get talked about with the Gulag enough is, for the most part, I don't have to deal with being in the Gulag and then having some asshole up top talking to his teammate and telling him where I am. I always hated
another
that.
bug.
It, no, I hated that crap. Like, dude, because also too, you got to think about this. When I go into the gulag, I mute my mic. I don't want to hear my teammates.
Yeah.
I don't. So I just mute it. But I don't. I never liked the idea of getting cheap intel like that. So I'm glad they fixed that. That's something else that's good.
Yeah.
But overall, the gulag, as long as they keep the damn lasers out of it and don't make us use revolvers in there ever again, ever, I think we're going to be okay.
I found a gulag from back in the day where do you remember in Warzone 1, like Verdansk time, when they would give you like what was it? A sniper rifle? Not a Car 98. They would give you, what was the one they would give you? I don't remember. But they'd give you like one of the heavier sniper rifles and fists. Like that
Yeah.
was a good day because everyone wanted to be. It was a build you couldn't quick snipe on. It took too long, and I have clip after clip of like just bum rushing them, dodging their first shot, and then just beating them down, and it was glorious. So, give us fun, like give us fun weapons. Coming back from that was the day where you came. No matter what, you came back with a starter pistol. So it didn't matter what they gave you in the gulag. You were screwed when you dropped in, anyways. So I'm glad they made that
Yeah,
change
no
and stuck
kidding.
with it.
And even like being bought back later in the game now, you still come back with
Something.
at least something.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to compete consistently with loadout weapons, but you at least come back with something. The other thing that I like that they did overall that was like a quality of life change, and I can't remember when they did it, but it does kind of apply to what we're talking about gulag wise. I've been using my C4 a lot more in the gulag.
Really?
Getting it over the wall, breaking plates, and then immediately pushing and getting a quick kill out of it if I can hit
Okay.
my shots, which is 50-50.
Yeah. If you can hit your shots, that's always the key, right?
Yeah.
So sweet.
But yeah, so we talked about weapons and we talked about the meta. How are you feeling about the current state as far as meta goes?
It's okay. Part of the problem with MW3, and MW2 had this a little bit, but they kind of solved it over time, is MW3 does not have a lot of guns with a great identity to them. They all kind of feel the same. No recoil, the sound, especially when you're suppressing guns, the sound is all the same. They all are pretty close. The top contenders are all pretty close in movement stats. They're pretty close in the look and feel and the handling of it. Right, you're really splitting hairs and looking for that extra damage point per. Like which one kills in one 10, 20 milliseconds better, stuff like that. So I feel like right now the problem is what guns are fun, right? And it's a very short list. I mean, right now, we've had the Ram 7 forever.
And it was fun to use.
I didn't like it. We've talked about this before. I don't like the recoil pattern. It has like when you run the recoil like the right build, unless you are iron sights only, and I just am not an iron sight guy. I need a little red dot on it. Otherwise, I'm really not enjoying it. But that's probably because I'm old. But if you're not running the iron sight build, it has a weird like half moon shape midway through the recoil, right around the point where you're gonna down somebody at range. And it's like it just does a thing where it's like it'll go, you'll on it, and then all of a sudden it'll just curve around. And if you don't adjust for it, you miss the kill shot, and they can usually get away. Or if you do adjust for it, like it's a weird shape and and throws me off. At least I know some people can get through it. You can more or less get rid of it with an iron sight build, but again, for long range, I don't like the iron sights at all.
what compensator or what muzzle piece are you using right now? Are you going suppressed, or I feel like we've had this conversation before, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
just trying to refresh my memory here.
It depends. I feel like so. This is one thing that started in MW2, and I think has carried through. Is that there are different attachments, especially muzzle attachments. They behave differently on different guns, right? So it's like the same brake or the same suppressor on every gun isn't a thing anymore, and so I think you have to kind of bounce around. I mean, there's so many to pick from, which is its own problem. But with that being the same, there's people that just they rubber stamp every build, and it's like, oh, I just picked this one because oh, this has good stats. But when you actually sit there and try every single muzzle, and you try every single underbarrel, and you test them, what you find is that certain ones on certain guns affect recoil patterns and visual recoil differently. And so you really have to put a lot of effort into trying different things. So I think it depends, which one to use is really gun specific, I think. There are some guns that benefit from a suppressor, like the Spitfire, and that it just smooths the recoil or it smooths the visual shake or whatever. But there are other guns that you want to throw a brake on because forget being on the minimap. You just want to be able to hit your shots and then let them come, right? And and so I think I think we're in one of those weird spots in the um in the in the life cycle of the game where you you can't pick one attachment and apply it to everything.
I've been actually using that Zeman 35 compensator on almost everything. On almost everything. I need to look at that Cassius brake on a couple of these guns, but that Zeman 35, like I don't use a suppress. I used to use a suppressor on everything, period, everything, except for my SMG, like up close, who cares? But like any AR, LMG, battle rifle, whatever, I always had a
Mm-hmm.
suppressor on that. And I started seeing a lot of people running that Zeman compensator, specifically with the, excuse me, the HRM.
Yep.
And then being able to see it on the Ram 9, the Ram 7, the BASB, I've used it on that. It's actually pretty good. And it takes you off, I don't remember the exact percentage, but it takes you off the mini map like 30 or 40% faster if
Mm-hmm.
you use that. And
Yep.
it's pretty stable. And then you couple that with that Jack glassless optic,
Oh,
it's really good.
it's fun. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things of like there's always something out there, right? There's always I mean, there's what, like 130 optics and like 100 almost 100 brake like different muzzle devices out there. And so
Right.
it's kind of like you have to go through and pick at all of them. And here's the other thing they changed. They changed the visual recoil, more or less got rid of it, right? Like they got rid of the firing stability thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
mean that's outside of like or no, I'm sorry, they got rid of aim sway. They got rid of the aim sway mechanic from automatic rifles. It's still on sniper rifles, which is its own thing to think about when you build those. But that changed everything, right? Like you no longer had, so suppressors tended to help with the aim, the aim stability more. Um, and by getting rid of that, like it opened up what you could do and what you could try to do it. So anybody listening at home, what the mechanic was is that if you were to ADS at a point on a target, right, your gun would start moving randomly in a um, within a certain radius of that target, to the point that like if you put it center mass at somebody at 25 meters, that the point of aim could wander off target to the point that like it was just off target. And when you pulled the trigger, the moment you pulled the trigger is it put your point of aim on like wherever you were in your sway, right? So like what would happen is you would be pointing your crosshair at center mass on a target, but when you pull the trigger, your first shots wouldn't always be on center mass, and especially controller players, um, it could lock you off target on aim assist, right? It would have you just off target enough that you're missing shots by default. So it was kind of a weird mechanic, and it was I understand from the point of view of trying to make the gunfights feel more dynamic and realistic. Because if you've ever held a rifle, that there's a natural sway to your body. Your breathing affects it. Your fatigue in your arms affect it. If you're moving, like all of these things affect movement of a rifle while you're holding it. But let's be honest, it's a video game and it's Call of Duty, and that doesn't work here, unfortunately. So they got rid of that whole mechanic, which was great for the meta. It opened it up a lot. But now it's about hunting through all the different attachments to figure out which one's best for which gun. And I think, like you mentioned, most people pick something that works good enough, and they use it for everything until somebody figures out the next good enough universal.
Well, that's why it's good that there's people like Alex at over at Warzone Loadouts and Tony at True Game Data and I mean you really, I mean, like I said earlier, you pointed me in Modern Warfare 2 to a few weapons 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead of schedule when they were in the meta. So like I said, I feel like you've got a really good pulse for that. And I want to mention something else too. The more and more I think about it, I will say that is something that they did do better in Modern Warfare 2 version of Warzone compared to this one. As far as they did have guns that were fun to use, mostly. I mean, they crapped on snipers the entire time. And snipers, while they're a little better right now, they're still not great, right? Like, I still think that there's so much room for improvement for those. But overall, like, the guns felt more fun to use. Like, the TAC 56 was fun. The TAC V, fun to use. There was it wasn't a Mac 10. It was like a little Uzi type SMG that was fun to use. I forget what it was called, but I mean the guns just overall were fun to use.
And there was a variety of different.
It was hard to
guns.
Yeah, well, there's exactly more variety, but on the other hand, it was hard to really appreciate that at the time because we're dealing with all the other crap that we were ticked off about. So, that in retrospect, they did do a decent job about that, minus adding that stuff, which this is going to be the other point I was going to make based on what you just said. So you start talking about, the realism aspect of it, right? Isn't it funny, like just the tolerance we have for that in game on some things, but then on other things we don't have it? Like me personally, I don't like the idea of being able to drop out of the plane shooting while you're going down and cutting your chute 18 times, right? Because that's not realistic.
Right.
But I did not like all the visual recoil and all the shake and everything else, which is realistic to go with the guns. So it's funny because it's not on purpose, but it is a certain level of, I guess you could label that as hypocrisy, really.
Well, it's interesting because Call of Duty has always been a realistically styled game. And I think that's one of the things that is that the community is really split on, is being realistic. Like how realistic can it be? Like right now we're going to get into, we might actually segue into our next segment here momentarily, but Warzone Mobile is getting dragged because it looks like shit. It looks rough, right? It looks like a mobile version of Fortnite in terms of how it's textured and how the graphics are, even when it's running at full tilt, which is interesting because it's a lot of the same people who have harped on realism is not part of COD, right? Like the same people who will say COD is not a real, it's an arcade shooter, it's not a realistic shooter, are then harping on the graphics are not good, right? And I think it's an interesting dichotomy to be in, because if it's not a realistic shooter, then who cares what the graphics look like? Look at Fortnite. Fortnite's not realistic. And it's like the wall is just a pink square with another square attached to it, right? Like to form a house. And so you look at those graphics, and it's like no one would look at that and say, "Oh, that has good graphics." But then you look at COD, right, and it's like photorealism is the name of the game. It's like that's the default. If it's not photorealistic, it's bad. And yet, realism is dragged in the game. And so, I think as a community, we have this weird tension between realism and not realism, and trying to balance that is got to be a nightmare from the studio's point of view.
I think though that there's a difference though, because you got to be able to separate that from graphically versus mechanically. I think those are two different things. But that's a great conversation that I think I'm going to try to have with my guy that works, that we've discussed, that does some of the graphic stuff on the game. I'd really like to get some off the record input as far as that goes. But then you also got to think about this too. Couple things. One, in the game right now, that area downtown where you can get on those roofs, and there's like 3 that are the same, and they have the little stairwells outside.
Yep.
And then you have the big building, which a lot of people call Trump Tower.
Trump Tower. Yep.
Yeah. So we were on top of one of those last night, and I'm literally looking at a building that's maybe 100 meters away, and it wouldn't render. Like it was kind of, how you get that like fuzzy, and I don't know if that happens on console too, but like it wouldn't render. Now I don't know. I mean, maybe that's match specific, just for that match, but it wouldn't render. And I think that people are used to, aside from that, just graphics on a console and a PC. They're used to those kind of graphics. They're not used to what they're getting on mobile right now. And it's a lot of people that switched from those so they could play Verdansk to go over there. They thought they were going to get Verdansk graphics that we got in 2020 versus what they're getting on mobile now. And I'd be curious if they're even on this, if they're built on the same engine, or just how different it is, because you're going from other platforms like your consoles and your PC compared to being on mobile, where you have Android, which I hear is taking it in the shorts, and things are not good for them right now, and Apple or iOS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, first of all, these things are phones, right? Like they're not gaming PCs. It's like I look at what I was talking to Lizard about this last night when we were playing, and it's like he has a gaming PC with a big old graphics processor on it, and it's water cooled, and like 20 zillion fans on it, and like all this stuff, and it has all of this gear to keep it under control temperature wise, so that processor can run at high speed, versus phones and tablets, which are being designed to be as small and compact as possible, which is the opposite of what you want in something that's going to do a lot of processing, right? Because that generates heat. Heat has to dissipate. And so what you want is a large volume of space around whatever's generating the heat, so that you can push air through it, you can run water past it, or coolant through it. Anything to dissipate heat as fast as possible. You can put giant heat. They used to have these giant heat sinks, which would be like 2-inch blocks of steel fins that you would glue on top of processors, just to help push the heat off of them. And now they're fan units, right, on top of your GPUs. They literally have fans on them. So you're trying to take all of that processing power and jam it down into a device that is designed to be as compact and small as possible, which means
it fits in your pocket.
Yeah. So A, you're going to be limited on that, and B, the heat itself is not going to dissipate very efficiently when you do push it to its limits for an extended period of time. So, and that impairs performance, right? The hotter electronic components get, the more difficult it is for them to send their electrons back and forth, and therefore the slower it goes, the more it slows down. So the ability to have the photorealistic graphics is just not going to be there. And I think a lot of people didn't understand that going into it. So I think there's a lot of frustration. Android as an operating system is also difficult to work with because for iOS, for example, this is what I ran into when I did app development. We used the camera in the device, and our goal, or one of the apps that I worked on, was to boot the camera faster than the native camera app could boot. Right? On iOS, the code that governs the camera is the same on every device. Right? It's the same code. It operates in the same manner. The literal question is, well, now there's like the 3 lenses, but back then there was 1 lens, right? You had 1 camera, right? So it was how much resolution do you get from the picture, and also how fast can the phone process. Those were the determining factors. You use the same commands and the same optimization for all of it. And so when they came out with a new phone that was faster, like the only thing that we just loaded the app in and it just ran faster, right? So our optimizations worked. We tried to mirror it on Android. And the problem is you didn't have one manufacturer, right? You could have a phone by Google, a phone by Samsung, and a phone by, I don't know, insert random company, right? They could all make an Android phone and use the same operating system, but they're all different hardware specs. They all behave differently, and the operating system is tailored to each one. So you can't make one command, because it turned out that at the time, the camera software that operated the camera for the Google one was different. The commands were different than one of the other ones. And then AT&T, the same phone offered by AT&T versus Verizon, actually had a different interface. They changed it in the operating system for their, to brand it to their system, right? And it was all this bloatware and crap in it. So you couldn't write one command. You had to write a command that fished out what operating system you were running, what the commands were, and then generated that. Like, so the app was very difficult, and we never achieved the same level of optimization on Google, on any Google device, compared to Apple, because there was so much bloatware. We had to add so many checks and so many tests to it. We gave up. We just shelved the project and said we're not doing it. Like, it's not possible. So for something like this, the ability to make it run on older devices, on all the different manufacturers, is very remarkable. It's remarkable that it works as well as it does. But I think people expected it to be like loading up Warzone on a PlayStation. It just runs, right? You download it and it works. And that's not how Android works. Like, it's just not.
Well, my son has, I think, an iPhone 11. Like, we didn't buy him a new phone. He was trying to play Warzone. And it was funny. At the time, I didn't think about it until a little bit later, but he was telling me it was laggy and it didn't run well, those kind of things. And then I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, well, you're 4 generations in the past on that phone. That's likely not optimized for that phone and that hardware. So
no,
it's probably not going to run very well for you. But you actually ran, I guess, a significant amount of Warzone Mobile. What are your impressions?
So I did a video on this. You can pull it up on Twitter or on YouTube. But the TLDR is, it doesn't look amazing, right? It's a mobile game. It looks good for a mobile game, but it doesn't look amazing. Like, if you were to compare clips from this to clips of Verdansk back, in its prime, you'd be like, dude, what? It'd be like if we tried to run OG Warzone on an Xbox 360. That's kind of like
Probably wouldn't
that's the
run.
feel. Well, it wouldn't run at all, but it would look terrible, right? And that's okay, right? Going into it, it actually is better than I expected it to be. I had very low expectations. And the controls are weird. So it has giant dead zones on your controls on controller. If you're the kind of person who can do touch controls on an FPS game, I think that's great. I don't have the mental awareness to have my fingers on a piece on a plate of glass and like have them always be in the exact same spots every time. I need that tactile feedback. Like I need to feel buttons and feel joysticks, right?
Right.
Some people can look at that and like their brain, they can segment part of their brain to like keep their fingers in the right spot in it. And I've watched clips of people playing touch, and it's amazing. It's kind of like the mouse and key of mobile gaming, right? You get like I saw a guy on an iPad with 7 fingers, using 7 fingers to play, which is remarkable. And so the controls are kind of wonky. The day one servers were laggy, so it was a little rough. And I've been trying to get it to play to stream it, so there's a little bit of latency coming in from that. And there's a lot of little technical things that are just little frustrations. So, right away up front, there's a lot of turnoff. There's a lot of things that like if you are expecting it to run like it's running on your PC on your 4080 Super, right? That no, you're going to be disappointed. That being said, when you get past all that, you figure out the controls and you get more comfortable with it, and you kind of get some settings dialed in. There's a lot of settings that don't seem to match up one to one with how they're presented, how you're used to. So you have to learn what the settings are and how they function and get those configured. And that took me probably an hour of like messing around with it. But I got it figured out. I landed about four and I've played about 5 hours, and it's remarkably fun. It is a fun game for what it is. When you get past all the technical issues, and especially if you can get it onto a bigger screen, it's a lot of fun. And there are some big benefits to playing that versus playing the main game. One, and some of them are surprising, and we're gonna delve into one of them here in a minute. But I don't think there's SBMM in this game at all. So if there is, it's very, very light. So every match feels random. I played a couple matches last night before I went to bed. Got slammed in the first one, kind of walked away even. And then the next one just absolutely dunked on the lobby, right? Like it was, and that's how it's been. It's like, I'll go 1 kill, 2 kills, and then drop 10. And there's no feeling of, so I had, yesterday I played on stream for 2 hours. I dropped, struggled for a little bit, kind of got locked in, dropped a 10 kill dub, dropped a 9 kill game, dropped an 8 kill after that. And then, struggled for a game and then dropped 7, like kind of back and forth like that, which compared to last night, I was playing with Lizard on the big game. And it's like we had some good lobbies to start with, and I dropped some good kills. He was dropping 20s, I was dropping less, but still good. Still good for me. And then we won 3 games straight, and you could just feel SBMM slam down like a ton of bricks, and all of a sudden it was like I was struggling to hit the ground, much less be able to play.
It's funny because I said the same thing on a tweet maybe a couple weeks ago. It was like, yeah, I made the mistake of winning a match. And Lucci commented, and he said that is the game just trying to see where you're at after that and like determine whether you need to be moved up in a different skill bracket or whatever, and trying to determine that you're good. Now, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. You'd have to go back and look at the exact tweet to see what he said, but that was the gist of what I got.
Yeah.
So I mean, so that tells me right there that they're probably. Oh, wait, you were on the big map anyway. That's what we were
Yeah, I was
talking
on.
about. You and David.
Yeah, we were on either. No, we were on Resurgence. We were Resurgence. But still, it was like it was not. It was, you could tell when SBMM slammed down on us, because it was rough, and it was just, it was a struggle to get through. I think we won 4 total games last night, and it was like, I mean, look, these guys are way better than me, but I was we got to a point where I was having to be dragged. I think I got picked up 7 times in one game. Like,
You got
not
bought
even
back
just
7 times?
no. I had to get picked up, but it was like there were no plates every time I turned the corner. It was like I was just getting, jump cornered and just dogged on routinely, and it was so frustrating. But with mobile, it doesn't have the feel. Like, it doesn't like, I have not had a curtain of difficulty slammed down on me, and so I think it's been for me being able to go back and forth between these two systems is eye-opening to me. And so I'm going to I'm going to shelve this for a minute, because we have some other things I want to get to first, but I'm going to come back to that with you, talking about SBMM more specifically.
Yeah, I was hoping you would.
But yeah, the game, it has all the current guns and weapons mixed with and all the current vehicles, which I have limited amount of time to drive to mess with. I just haven't come across them enough where it makes sense to get in one. Mixed with the OG map, like, this is like season 2 of Verdansk, like 2020 high pandemic. Stadium still closed. Like, it feels good to be back, man. Like, it really does. And there's a lot of nostalgia that kicks in, but that map plays so well. And everybody liked to dog on it being bullshit. But you know what? Here's the thing. The buildings are all the same, right? Like, they're all the same that we remember. And not only are the buildings all the same, but like the layouts, like if I jump into an apartment building, I know where I'm going. Like, I know how to get out of it. I know where to go on it, right? I know where the choke points are, because, it's the same building all over the map. And that's such a good thing. Like, people don't realize how good that is. Like, I can look at a building and I know the layout. I know what I need to do, or I know to avoid the building, right? I know it's okay. I'm going to climb 2 flights of stairs and I'm going to get nerfed by some rat sitting up there with bouncing betties. Fine. I'm not going in there. Like, I'm smarter than you. And so having all of that back is like, it is night and day on how this game plays versus what we're playing right now. And you know what? Here's the other thing. There's no buyback. There's no coming back, right? Like, you could buy back at $4,000 like the old days. 4,000 or 5,000? 4,000, I think. 4,000 like the old days. And there's no tokens. There's no redeploy packs. There's no flares. There's no none of that, right? Like, you die, you're out, right? You get your gulag, you win your gulag, you're back in it. You lose your gulag, like, you're just watching. And because of that, people are quitting out really fast. Like, if I drop into quads, by the end of the first circle, I'm duo quads.
That's got to be frustrating.
You know what? It's okay, because everybody's doing it, right? So, like, I'll get to final circle and I don't have 5 full squads. Like, you make top 5, and there's like 7 people left in the match.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, mobile gaming is gaming on the go, right? So they
Yeah.
may not really care about people leaving as much as they would on a console. But yeah, that's got to make the experience a lot better, because I guess I play with people who just can't freaking die. I mean, like I'll have a game where I've got 3 kills and then I die,
Uh-huh.
or 2 kills and then I die, and then I die in my gulag and I should be even, and then I'm bought back 2 more times with 2 more deaths, and then I just went to 2 and 4 in that match. So I died
Yeah.
4 times but only got 2 kills. Like that's kind of frustrating. So that does sound like that's one of the benefits of playing on mobile. And
Uh-huh.
I hope that the big map or regular Warzone can get back to that kind of experience. I don't know
Yeah.
that they ever will, but it's definitely a dream for me for them to be able to differentiate between the two. So I got to do a little bit of the training. I started kind of playing with it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, because I've been pretty busy this week, as we've
Yep.
talked about.
Had a busy week.
I was having a hard time because evidently I set up 2FA, or two-factor authentication, like, and it turns out it was in 2021. I found the email. I actually still had the email with my alternate codes.
Oh, good.
So I was trying to make some changes and log in, and it was asking me for my codes, and I'm like, I don't know what authenticator app to use. I've got 3 different ones on my phone, 2
Yeah.
of which are for work, and then one of them is Google or whatever.
Yep.
And so that wasn't tied to Activision. So I don't have the one that was tied to Activision. So I couldn't generate a code, but I couldn't
Right.
log into my Activision account and make changes. So I was kind of screwed. So I'm hoping I'm going to play with
this
it.
Is how it's supposed to work. For everybody listening that doesn't understand, right? This is how you keep someone from stealing your account. Like, if you've watched my video about 2 weeks ago, how hackers steal accounts, and that's how cheaters get into the game. It's because people don't turn on MFA, so that if your account and password gets stolen, someone can't just hop in and steal it. So I'm glad the system actually works. It sucks that it wasn't working well for you, but you had the codes, right?
Right.
You found the codes, so you got in?
I don't know if I've got in yet. I hope the codes are still good, but I do have the official email from Call of Duty with 10 codes. So I'm going to try those, and then I'm going to go in there and fix it.
Okay.
Yeah,
they should work.
My biggest thing is I wasn't sure if there was a specific authenticator app that I needed to use with Activision, or if I had to tie another one to it or whatever.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure how that was working. So yes, like you, I'm glad that part of it worked, even though it was a minor irritation to me. I don't really know how much mobile gaming I'm going to really do. I mean, I am going on the road next week, so I'll probably play some if I can. And so yeah, I want to dive down into it, but that's the extent of my mobile gaming experience.
So here's the other thing that makes this game fun. The mobile one. That until I could go side by side, I couldn't understand it, right? Aim assist is different. And it is significantly weaker than in the main game. And it is not weaker in rotational aim assist, the way that we have seen, a lot of our friends post about, in that if somebody runs past you, you're going to rotate automatically, right? It's a mobile game. You would expect that sort of thing to happen. This game does not lock your crosshair onto the character, even though it will take care of rotating it and doing that. You have to, as a player, stay on target manually, which at the surface sounds bad. And you know what? If you're a bad player, if you struggle mightily with staying on target, it's gonna feel difficult for you. Okay. But the aim assist doesn't lock you on like that, which turns out good for the game, because it rewards skill. The more practice you put in, the better you'll be at staying on target, the more kills you get. All right. but it increases survivability without having an absurd mechanical TTK. If you go back to JGod's spreadsheets from like 20, like the beginning of Cold War, end of OG Verdansk, the average TTK at range, the theoretical average, was like 750, like 750 milliseconds.
So three
When we
quarters
talk
of a
about,
second, basically.
yeah, right now they're at like 1100 milliseconds. Between the increased health and nerfing the guns, they've reduced that. In Warzone Mobile, I believe that if you were, I don't have data yet, but just from playing it, the TTK is somewhere about 750, 800 milliseconds mechanically, right? Like if you do the math on the gun, I'm pretty sure that's what you're going to get. It feels like it's closer to 1100 a lot of times because the aim assist doesn't lock on, which actually is good because if you're skilled, you can get closer to you can improve and you can kill quickly, right? But it also increases survivability because you can jump and dive and do different movements and break away from someone shooting you and escape or reposition or re-engage and get your shots off. I've had so many wins because somebody gets first shots on me, I'm able to jump and move and turn and position on them and actually hit my shots before they're able to compensate because the aim assist isn't locked onto to my player's model and dragging the crosshair on my body as I move. A lot of our friends that when they talk about aim assist, they complain about rotational aim assist. That's one of the things, I think we all know some names of people that harp on this routinely. They say rotational aim assist is the problem. It needs the nerf. I disagree completely. What needs to be nerfed is like they do in mobile, where the crosshair glues to the person. If the crosshair stays within a sphere of that person and you have to manually correct it, like it does on mobile, you don't need 300 health. You don't need to talk about adding more plates. You don't need to nerf guns to be 1100, 1200 milliseconds at range because people are going to miss shots. They're going to miss shots. And that increases the survivability. And good players who want to use the movement that they have, that want to be aggressive, they can do so, and they can come out victorious on gunfights, even gunfights where they don't have an initial advantage. But it doesn't create the situation where controllers simply cannot keep up with the movement, right? Like the crosshairs, when somebody runs past me, I can rotate and I can stay with them. And if I'm skilled enough to keep the crosshairs on target, which I'm not usually, but when I am, I can still get the kill, but I can still see them. I can rotate with them. They don't disappear past me, and I have no idea what's going on, right? I'm not sitting there wandering around, where is he? And that is such a different experience than what we've had in the past, where you can outrun somebody's rotation. The ability for someone to rotate and keep somebody on their screen is so important and such a critical part of the game. That part needs to be there, but the computer shouldn't lock on to the player model. That should be still your job to do. And if you overdo it, like your ability to over rotate, overshoot the target, it should be your job to correct it. And that is something I think that mouse and key players are very familiar with, right?
Right.
And so as you are a now mouse and key player,
correct,
how do you feel like having played mouse and key versus controller? Like, where do you sit on this? Like, where do you feel that there's an issue?
I have to be honest. I can, in a way, see some of our friends' points of view, but I'm also looking at it in terms of Call of Duty having the most casual player base, and the way they look at analytics I don't think it's going to significantly change. So that's first and foremost what I think about it. I know that with mouse and key, I sometimes tend to overcompensate, like because you don't get that lock on, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can go back, but you also have the ability to quickly correct.
Right.
So I can tell you after 7 weeks of playing, I have not one time thought, "Oh my god, I just died only because of aim assist." Like that's not really in my head.
That must be a skill
I'm
issue.
still trying to learn the. What's that?
That must be a
What's
skill issue.
that? Oh, 100% a skill issue. Yeah. But I mean I can understand what they're talking about or why they feel the way they do. I think that some people are a little too dramatic when it comes to talking about aim assist. The
Mhm.
game doesn't fucking aim for you. You can't set down your controller and walk away and go grab a cup of coffee while I'm running around in circles and your reticle's just constantly tracking me 360.
Yeah.
I think that it takes more skill to be a good player on mouse and key, which I am not. So I'm in no way
Yeah.
am I trying to say I'm a skilled player. It takes more skill to be good on mouse and key than it does on controller. But there are people on controller. That's why there's a difference, though, when it comes to the aim assist. Not everybody can activate it properly. I know
Yeah.
my aim assist never looked like what they showed on the videos ever. It never felt that way. And if I
Yeah.
did do it, it was by accident. And that's what a large part of the player base, when they activate the aim assist, they did that crap by accident. They didn't do it on purpose. They didn't know what they were doing. They play 4 hours a
Yeah.
week. How are they going to know?
Yeah.
Whereas a guy that plays 8 hours a day, like, say, Teepee or Braxton, those
Yep.
dudes know instantly the sweet spot for aim assist and are able to use it. So that's why you have a top tier mouse and key player versus a top tier controller player. I can understand why that top tier player might have a gripe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a
You know,
mid-tier
but
mouse and key player, like someone who's statistically mid-tier and someone who's statistically mid-tier on controller, I think, and this is one of those things where I have a little bone to pick with the way with when people say, "Oh, I switched to controller and I set my PR." Right there, to
yeah,
have statistically the two inputs be equivalent, right? The mouse and key player has to be a higher skilled player because mouse and key is a more difficult input. And so, and for those who haven't listened all the way through, I played mouse and key growing up. I've played since back in the day when controllers, you didn't have first person shooters with controllers. You had to play mouse and key. And, or in the early one, Wolfenstein 3D, you just played keyboard because there was no looking up. You just look left and right. But mouse and key was a thing. I played on it for decades. And then I would play hybrid, so mouse and key on PC, and then controller on console. And then in even through Warzone, Cold War era, I played on mouse and key. So I've got the experience. I've done both, and I'm comfortable saying that if you have two equivalent statistical players, the mouse and key player is more talented because they have to be, right, in order to make the game work. So I think that I'm curious this week if you are able to get on mobile and play it, and you bring a controller with you and kind of go back to the dark side for your mobile experience. I'm curious to see your thoughts on it as a mouse and key
yeah,
player
no,
because it feels to me.
I'm
Here's what I say: it feels to me like playing controller on COD Mobile is very similar to playing mouse and key in that it doesn't correct for you. You have to do the last mile correction 100% on your own. Like if you're
right.
not, you're toast.
Yeah, I'm anxious to dive into it. Like I said, I'm gonna be sitting in a hotel room for 3 nights, so I'm sure at least one or two of those nights I'll probably devote a good amount of time to hopping into Warzone Mobile or whatever. But as far as learning the input though, I don't feel like I struggle on a lot of things. as much as I was 7 weeks ago. I mean, I still have a long way to go. So in no way am I
Mm-hmm.
trying to say like I'm good. But what I will tell you is I am winning more fights up close than I was when I started. Um,
Good.
I am I am able to. I've been told that my movement, as far as being able to move around and things like that, is significantly better than when I was on controller. A lot more fluid and those kind of things. I'm still learning to put the sauce on people.
Hmm.
Um, as far as like being able to break cameras and stuff like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
overall, it's been a good experience, and I'm not as stressed trying to learn it while I'm playing. And I think part of that is the way I started playing it was in zombies and in plunder, and I don't really give a crap about either one of those modes, so I wasn't going to stress out
Good.
about it. I mean, you were there when I started.
Yep.
We played
Yeah.
plunder together. And then also, I'm very regimented in my routine, even
Mm-hmm.
though I'm a trash can a lot of times, and I feel like one right now because of this game and what we're about to talk about next. But I still am a creature of habit, and I believe that anything that takes a mechanical skill, you need to have repetition and practice and those things. And so I hop into aim labs every day, even if it is for 20 to 30 minutes. And then I'll go run matches against the bots. So I
Yep.
literally do the same thing every day. And I
And it's
feel
good.
like it's made a difference for me.
Well, aim labs and any kind of dedicated practice time is going to improve your skills. And I mean, look, I used to hang out near the where the Sharks play. Like I played hockey where they practice, San Jose Sharks, and I would watch them practice sometimes. And you know what? Professional players, 20-year veterans, they would run the same basics drills that I would run as a new skater during like before and after their practices. Like they just sit there and they always, always work on the basics at some level.
Muscle memory.
Stuff they could do a million. They probably would do some of these drills. They probably have 100 million repetitions over the course of their life doing some of these drills, and they still do them. So anybody who argues that doing drills, doing practice is not beneficial, doesn't know what the F they're talking about, and I will die on that hill. So you are doing everything right, and you're doing a fantastic job. I'm going to tell you that right now.
I appreciate that. And it's been nice because I haven't even been tempted to pick up a controller. Like the only reason I did pick it up is because I was trying to sync it for Warzone Mobile, and that was pretty much it. But I'm all in on this input. I think it's a
Good.
fun input. I know that there are benefits to being on this input that controller doesn't have, and I also know that there are drawbacks to the input that controller doesn't have, and vice versa. It just is what it is. You know me. You know my nature. I don't.
Yep.
I try not to, for the most part, focus on just the negative, whether it be um, aim assist or cheaters or whatever. The one thing that I have not let go of, though, is the SBMM in this game. Because that has a more overarching and farther reaching effects on the community than aim assist ever will.
Okay. You and I have talked about SBMM, and I've had a
Yeah.
difference of opinion on the need for it. I no longer believe that outside of some very, very loose parameters, SBMM should be in games. I believe that there's a bracket of players that are so bad at the game because they're either brand new to gaming or they are, they have a mental or physical disability that limits their ability to play. And I think those people deserve to play, to not face the Braxes and the Aidens of the world
They should be able to opt into something.
if they want to. But I think there should be a bare minimum, like in In Call of Duty, if you're a 0.3 KD, you should not face 5 KD players. Okay? That doesn't mean that you should be immune to facing better players, but you shouldn't face the top of the bracket. If
No,
you're
never.
most players, 0.3 to 4 KD, right? You should not be insulated from better players than you. So I think if you have a way of isolating the really bad players and allowing the everyone else to play together, at the end of the day, I think it's better for everybody. The bad players will have to, get better. The good players won't get forced to be dealt with. Like, they won't be forced to play only against each other like they're playing, top 250 ranked. And everybody else will have a mixed bag. And that's how it is in Warzone Mobile. It's a mixed bag of players on every game. And sometimes I get slammed, and sometimes I do the slamming. And most of the time, it's a good, honest fight. But gosh darn it, when I played last night on the big game, and we won a couple of games in a row, and all of a sudden, bam! I could barely touch the ground, and we're just getting hammered. It's fucking frustrating, and I'm over it.
Yeah. So Sunday was the last time before last night that I actually played. Couple things about the SBMM, and it made the experience just a terrible experience. First of all, I partied up right off the rip with one guy that is not even like he's a good player, but it's not like he's like a 2 or anything like that. I'm not even sure. His KD may be right around a 1 in multiplayer right now. But we partnered up and we played multiplayer for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours or so. We did not win a single MFing game. Not one. So I don't understand how I can go play by myself and I'm winning at least half of my matches. I'll have a couple bad matches throughout that time period, however long that is. But the second I party up with somebody, it immediately turns into that. Then, and part of this is my own fault, but I don't dictate who I play with based on what their KD is. I don't. Even if I know it's about to be a shit show. Then I hooked up with my buddy Riddick, and we played Warzone, and he's got a 2.68 KD. This dude is really good. He's literally good at every single video game he's ever played. Mm-hmm. So we hook up with him, and it was just a miserable experience. It had me so pissed off to the point where I wasn't sure I was even going to play Warzone yesterday. If my friend B-Sum hadn't asked, I probably wasn't going to play. I'm glad I did because the vibes were great last night. We got crapped on a couple times, but we crapped on some other teams too, and we got a win. So cool on the big map. But like, they got to figure out a way to make it more of a random experience and stop worrying about whether worse players party up with better players and then protecting everybody. So then you throw them into a lobby that's equal to what the better player is, that's way too high of a skill lobby for the other two people that are playing. Like, it just makes it not fun. Like, stop doing that. That's the frustrating thing to me.
Yeah. Last night I played with Lizard, and I don't know if it's just I haven't played enough lately for SBMM to know what to do with me, but it's like we jumped in, and the first couple of games, we made some bad decisions early, and it didn't work out well. And, we were in and out of the game so faster than it takes to load into it. That being said, we got into a rhythm, we got some good games, and it was like, he was dropping 20s, which is normal for him. I'm dropping, 9, 10, which is normal, which is a little bit high for me for consistently. But they were fun lobbies. They were hard fought. And then we win a couple. And then all of a sudden, slam goes the SBMM. And he's dropping 10. We're getting booted before top 10. And it was just everybody's cracked to their limits. Everybody's cracked. There's no like, and for me, like, I'm already batting kind of above my skill level when I play with him. But when the
Right.
SBMM slams down like that, it was it was rough.
It's well, and the other thing too is, so my friend Ben Rogers from Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
Dallas Fort Worth radio legend Ben Rogers, if you know, you know. Um, he he won't play with people that are on mouse and key anymore because he says that the lobbies immediately get harder. And we do know, based on what Call of Duty released in their blog post, that they do consider input. And that actually makes sense. I personally have not tested that out, but I can tell you I play with one other mouse and key player consistently, my friend Chaos. And maybe that's partially why I feel like I've been just getting bent over for the last 2 or 3 months on this game. Again, good nights and bad nights. Mostly rough nights, but also too, let's consider this as well. With all the ways to come back and things like that, I feel like that just exacerbates the problem, right? Like, make
100%.
it feel more like a BR, and maybe this maybe this SBMM isn't quite as big of an issue for a lot of people because, again, it's not fun to get 2 kills and die 6 times, 3 or 4 different matches a night. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people are gonna be like, get good, whatever. Kiss my ass. I don't care. It's just not fun, because that's the reality of the experience for a good part of the player base. If all things were equal and they were playing in my same situation, it would be the same thing for them.
Yep.
So,
And
they've
look,
got to
it's like,
do something.
and it's like, look, my old IRL group that I would play with, like, they've all slid back. They've downslid in their stats. Their stats are half of what they were a year ago. And they have the same struggle. It doesn't matter how tough the lobby is. They have the same struggles. The difference is whether SBMM is slamming them, in the first minute of the game or the 5th minute of the game. They're still struggling. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that the idea that a bad player will have a better time in a heavy SBMM lobby, I think, is silly. I've come to terms with this, because they're gonna get slammed and they're gonna have a hard time against other bad players too. And it depends on kind of where they are within that SBMM bracket that they're put in. But the minute they get pushed out of that bottom bracket, like, they just get dunked right back into it. And that's different than with Warzone Mobile and the way the lack of SBMM, in that you don't know the fight you're going to get into. People behave differently. They think differently because they're not totally cracked out. People aren't holding hands nearly as much. And it's been just a better experience. Like, I'll go 2 kills one game, 10 the next, 4 the next, 7, 10 again, right? Like, I don't know why I'm hard stuck at 10 right now, but I am. But it feels better, right? It just feels
It's fun.
better. Yeah. I'm having fun in Warzone Mobile. I haven't had fun in a while, but I'm having fun.
So,
and I like it.
So I think that if they would kick out the part of recency, like your recent matches, kick that part out. And if you want to consider skill, fine, make it cumulative and ping based. Those should be the only 2 factors that they're considering for the matchmaking.
Yes.
Ping,
I agree.
and your overall skill, if you're going to consider skill and not give it as much weight. So in my opinion, that's how they should do it. And I think it would be a much better experience. I mean, I've been on record as saying that since we started this
You have been.
podcast. I've not changed my opinion on that, because I know from my own experience, and it's not just anecdotal. It isn't. I never struggled in Call of Duty until 2019. And what came in 2019? Dedicated servers, cross-plat, and this type of SBMM. And it has been a struggle to go even ever since. And that's also when they ratcheted up all the store stuff even more than what it was before. Like, you know what I mean? Like, sure, with all the crates and all that stuff, yeah. But I don't think they put as much emphasis on that store as they're doing right now.
I think you'd be surprised at that. I think the problem is that the prior CODs that had the loot crates performed generally poorly with the COD community. Like, they had a very specific niche that people like to play. And I think a lot of the people that came back during the pandemic were, Modern Warfare attracts a different crowd than, say, Black Ops 3 or 4 did, or Infinite Warfare, right? Different crowd of people. So I think the numbers were different, but the proportional numbers, like players, like dollars per player spent, I think were very comparable. And I know you didn't notice. I know you didn't notice this, but this was something that did come up, especially in Advanced Warfare, where it was like you couldn't, like, there were guns that that were meta guns. The meta guns came from loot crates because you couldn't build them. They didn't have a builder like we have now, right? You just picked your gun and you built your classes. But like the blueprint guns you could get from loot crates performed better statistically than the ones you could get by grinding in game. So you had to.
I only played that game for a month. Yeah, so I only played that game for a month. So that's probably why, thinking about it, that's probably why I never really paid that much attention to it. Now, I also know that World War II had variants in their crate, because they still had kind of a crate system too, if I remember correctly, right?
All the way until, I think, Blackout. I think when Blackout
came out, they had to get rid of it. The more I think about it, some of those variants, though, specifically, I can think of one that was the M1 carbine, but like the weapon skin on it was like what you would see on a plane, where it's like the white and black, and then it would have the Air Force star or Air Corps star on it. So that variant of that carbine was pretty solid, actually. So, all right, yeah. So now I get what you're saying about the crates and stuff like that. That actually makes sense. I hadn't really thought about it until you just said what you said, because I know we've had this conversation before, and I'm just like, dude, and that wasn't me trying to be a contrarian. It's just I play that game for a month, so I wouldn't.
Yeah.
No.
But that was the problem with the loot crates, is that it was gambling to be better, and the more you gambled, the more opportunities you had to get better loot, right? And so I think getting away from that is good. And now with SBMM, right, doing what it's doing to try and keep people on more, it's ultimately, because more time means, more opportunities for them to want to buy skins and whatnot. I think it's a weird problem to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It really is. And hopefully they'll do something, because I got to be really honest, guys. I bought the SBMM off.com thing. I have that geofence. I don't know that I've been able to use it correctly, because I didn't notice a big difference. And I think that's probably user error on my part. But I really didn't use the VPN part. Like, that's there. I didn't use it. But I was trying to at least geofence myself into Texas-only servers, which actually, the more I think about it, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense, considering I host every night anyway. So we're usually on those servers, and I'm getting shit on over there. So, maybe I'll find
we talked about this a little bit. They definitely you can break the matchmaking, but it's one of those things of like, for the limited amount of time that I could see some data that came from a system called Warzone Agent that one of our mutual friends got into, which I think ultimately got him shadow banned. But he could see the real time breakdown of the lobbies like you could with the old API, and that's something that they offered. And
And
when he did VPN in, you would get more lobbies that were body, but then you'd get more lobbies that were just chock full of sweats. And it was interesting to see that there were, in almost every lobby, there was another team that didn't belong in that lobby either. It
well, of
was
course,
like, you know, everybody's cheesing the system, right? Everybody's trying to break SBMM right now because it's suffocating. And so it's ultimately not working because the bad players aren't being protected from good players. Good players are getting in because they're breaking the system. And the system breaks itself sometimes. All right. It's not just people VPNing in. The system will break down on certain factors if like you have a weird collection of players or someone's got bad connection. And so the bad players are getting crapped on just as much anyways. The good players that get in, have to face other good players that are also doing the same thing. So you run into that, it's not cupcake walk for them all the time anyways. And honestly, like it's just not worth the frustration it's causing everybody, I don't think.
no, it really isn't. But so as far as like, I know we're kind of running late on time here, but like the VPN thing and it being different now than it was back in Verdansk and even Caldera,
Mm-hmm.
is that solely because we don't have the API and that's why it's not working
No,
like that?
no. What they have changed, and I have a couple of completely off the cuff guesses as to what they've changed, but they've changed the way the matchmaking works. And I think what used to happen is that they prioritized, um, and they still do prioritize time to load, right? So the longer it takes you to get into a match, uh,
Mm-hmm.
the um, the less the other factors contribute to the SBMM. So if you could force the
Sure.
system to put you into a lobby that was farther away, it would take you longer to load in, and therefore, the longer you made it take, the more it just dunked you into whatever lobby was first available. And actually, a lot of times the bot lobbies, right, as they call them, would take longer to put together because they have to find more. They have to kind of isolate these players more. So if they're
Sure.
just dumping you into a lobby, those tended to have more open spots that you could just dump into. They've done a good job, I guess you could say a good job, of identifying that and limiting it. And I think one of the things that they've done is they've taken that, because what the VPNs would do is they would take your matchmaking packets, the data you sent to create to find you the right match, and the VPNs would just send those packets out through the VPN system. But then when you actually connected to the game server, it was like you would use the geofence to say, I only want to connect to game servers near me, but it would send your packets, your matchmaking packets far away, and that's what would break the system. Okay. I believe unfounded don't. This is just my tin hat time. I believe what they've done is they said, all right, we're going to create a matchmaking kind of overlay over an area. So everybody match makes based on this one thing, and then it filters you. Once you put a match, it then assigns a server to the match. Instead, and so it's like two layers of servers almost. Like they've added another layer. And I think, and I'm guessing that's creating some of our ongoing server issues. And so basically they have a large pool of players that they'll gather together, put together an SBMM, a skill-based lobby, and then they'll assign that lobby to an actual game server. And what that does is that it limits the impact of the geofence and remote packets on the matchmaking, because when it finally puts you into a match, there's a big enough pool of players of matches that they're building simultaneously that it can find you one closer to your skill level, compared to the old days where it was dumping you straight into the game server, and so the game server went. So I think something like that is potentially in play to try and defeat these VPNs. I think that's happening, and in my head it makes sense, and it impacts, and it would make sense why latency and server stability is a little weird, because there's another step to it.
You've been right about this kind of stuff before, so I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year, maybe two, that stuff's not confirmed. But before we finish up this, I do want to say one thing. In no way do I want to have bot lobbies where I'm playing people with no thumbs and the reflexes of Helen Keller. I'm not interested in doing that. I just wanted to try to have a random experience where sometimes I'm crapping on the lobby and other times I'm getting crapped on. So I'm not trying to get into bot lobbies.
Mobile.
I just want, what's that? Oh, go mobile.
Come to mobile.
I'll believe me, I'm going to this week, but I just want to have random lobbies. I truly believe that is what is best for Call of Duty and best for the player base, because there's a lot of anger out there. It's not just me, guys. I'm not the only one. Like, even the top tier players are mad about the way matchmaking affects their gameplay.
Yeah. Everybody's mad.
Leave it in ranked.
Yeah. Everybody's mad,
Yeah.
and I think the experience is tough. And so I hope they fix it. I hope they make improvements going forward. Microsoft being in charge next year, or this year's game, the game coming up at the end of this year, probably the first time Microsoft is going to be able to have some sway. And in the past, they've mentioned they don't like the idea of SBMM. So having a lot of heads of the studios cleared out, a lot of people are no longer with, a lot of people in authority positions are no longer with Activision. So I'm curious to see how they restructure things and how they position themselves moving forward. I think they need to change something dramatically, because the way things are not being as well received as by the player base as a whole. So
no, it's not fun.
That being said, though, it is not fun. But when, as always the case, with us degenerates that stick to these games, right? When you do have fun, it's really fun.
Yeah.
And with that, I want to get to the fun part of the episode, which is our kill of the week. You said you had one last night. What was your kill of the week?
Yeah, we were sniping a little bit on top of a rooftop in downtown. A whole team, I guess, hit a jump tower or jumped off of one of the tallest buildings, and they were coming from my left to right, and I sniped a guy out of the air. I hit him once. He tried to drop, and then I hit him again. I led the shot and hit him in the head, and I put the video up on Twitter and on TikTok, but I'm trying to get better at sniping. I'm trying to get better at just in general. So, I thought it was a worthy clip, so I put it out.
Cool.
How about you?
So I had a bunch of sniping clips. I'm going to put together a montage for later, and I was going to pick one of those. But last night I hit one that was I hit a play that was great. It was on Fortune's Keep over by Pier. There's that wine bar, right? Kind of all covered in ivy. So Lizard was pinned down by a guy. He ran into an absolutely tough player, tough guy. And he was like, don't come over here. It's not good. And I'm like, because it's me. I'm king of bad decisions. I'm like, I'm not listening to you.
Me too.
I'm getting in the fight. Dive bomb in, pull my chute at the last second, drop behind the guy with the pistol, right? And he's fully kitted, right? He's got his loadout and everything. He's good to go. I drop in, land behind him, and he's so locked in on trying to get Lizard out. Lizard's like cracked, and he's done for. This guy's full up. Drop in, start popping him with the Diamante. He runs inside the wine bar. I chase him, and I've got Lizard in my ear going like, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's good. He's good. I just beat him the rest of the way down. And and I gotta look at the clip. I don't remember if it was a team wipe or not, but all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, you can do it that way too. And it was so satisfying to have one of those just drop in, take care of business. Great clip. That was one of the fun games. I think we went on to win that one. So
yeah, you were in flow state on that. Like you just were flowing and just doing, man. Like that sounds like a great clip. I can't wait to actually see it.
It was before the SBMM dropped in on us. But,
before you got hoed by SBMM?
Yeah. But yeah. It was a good clip. But yeah, on that one, we're gonna get SBMM'd out on this episode by going over time. But I want to throw out a thanks to everybody who sits through the episodes. We've got some good stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're talking about for the series and for the podcast here. So stay tuned. Make sure if you aren't following us, you check us out both on Twitter and Twitch. I am at sub1kd, and of course we have at J007TV. Jay, my illustrious co-host, as always, thank you so much for everything that you bring to the table and being you. I appreciate you. Everybody else, we will catch you the next time. This has been Sub 1 Kitty, along with J007 TV and the Slightly Above Average Gaming Podcast. We're logging off now, so we'll see you next time.